Yeah. Oh, whether the seatbelt's plugged in, and I figured out what the airbags are for.
Mm-hmm.
They're to make sure that the vehicle's totaled so that you can do commerce and sell a new vehicle, and they're to make sure that you have a good wreck. So, because if I'm doing 70 and a deer runs out and I hit it, it's going to set off my airbag. Now, I may have controlled the vehicle. The deer flew over the top of the car, but everybody's all right. But I'll lose control of that vehicle when the 200-mile-an-hour bag hits me in the face.
Yes, you would. You would, yeah. You would. And quite a lot of folk get killed by them. But I knew they wanted to total the vehicles when they gave you plastic bumpers. I knew that was the start of it, and told you they were better than metal ones. I knew it then, too.
And another thing they're doing to make sure that people have wrecks and hurt themselves and run the insurance business and the hospitals and doctors and all that is they're making the windshields down here. Now, just like the side windows, they're so black you can't look across the intersection and see that person's face.
Really? Yeah.
How many times you've been sitting at a four-way stop and you look over and you make eye contact with that person and he tells you to just go ahead? Or how would you like to be on the ground working with a shovel around a big caterpillar, and that caterpillar operator, a black tube around him, and you can't see his face?
Yeah, that would make you feel too safe at all. No.
And so it's the same thing in a vehicle as working by that caterpillar. There's no difference.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, you need eye contact, and it's even the gestures or just the facial expressions give you an idea what they're going to do.
Yeah, you know whether or not they can identify and are seeing you.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple as that. So that's the reason for the black glass: run more commerce, sell more vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the crumple cars, the cars that crumple when they hit something at 5 miles an hour.
Yeah. Okay, well, I heard that act of violence, and I'm starting to realize there's lots of acts of violence around us as we're brought up as children. Now, I'm including myself in that, because when I joined the Army, at a younger age, I went off in my mind thinking, well, I'm going to go kill somebody now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
In my older age, of course, realize how insane that is.
Yeah, men, especially boys, they got to grow up. You got to grow up and realize, no, this is not a fantasy. This is not playing anymore. And there's repercussions for everything that we do. Yeah.
Everything. Okay, well, thank you, Alan.
And thanks for calling. Yeah, but that gets me too. These tables of people coolly and calmly deliberating to crash economies and profit off them and put thousands into misery and probably death, starvation, who knows what across the world. But we don't call them murderers. That's odd to me. That's very, very strange to me, to be honest with you. Just because they're not caught with a club in their hands. Someone with a club might be doing it spontaneously. You see someone just blowing up. No, these guys do it calmly and deliberately. And they rule over us. And believe you me, they'll use all the systems, all the left wing, right wing, to keep themselves in power. Playing the games. Now there's Steve in Oregon as well there. There's Steve.
Hello, Alan. Hey, I wanted you to let you know whenever I call, I'll never debate you because you know so much more than I do. And the more that I learn, the less I know. I usually call because I have questions. I think iron sharpens iron, and I think the wise man has many counsels.
Yeah.
And talk to you about 100 things, but I'm just going to get to one right now. I'd love to talk to you, a long time. I'm just going to get to one. And that is, there is this thing that just came to my attention over this year. Oh, I need to let you know one thing. I got so bored of everybody else that I didn't even want to go on the internet. I don't want to do anything. And then I ran into you about 6 months ago, and I started listening to you, and you're about the only one that stimulates my thought process. And I really appreciate you for that. Okay, I'll get to my question. There is this thing that came to me because I go back in history is what I do. And you do the thing, and I like that. I go all the way back to where, and I know the Bible might be bastardized and all that. Sorry if that word doesn't fit, but all that. I do understand that. It still has a lot of really great information. And I look back, and there's one thing that come to me, and I'd like your opinion on this, and there's this thing called the two-seed bloodline. So I guess where it came from, Alan, was if you want to look at biblical scripture, which I kind of put my head above that and try to think, higher than that. But if you want to look at that, there was this two bloodline thing where actually Eve did not eat an apple like they told me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We had relations with the other bloodline, And I just wondered what you thought about that, because that goes back really far, and it's biblical and all that kind of stuff. I just was wondering what your thought process on that might be, because through my research, it could probably maybe be true. But I don't know, and I just thought...
No. The people who put it together weren't really childish. I mean, it's a very fairy tale, childish story, isn't it? And so there's obviously something deeper behind it. And of course, the whole Old Testament it's a book on how to manipulate power, basically. Really, and a system too. It gives you all the clues in a system, not only of money, but of slavery, and how that's okay, etc., etc. But if you go into the different schools of thought on it, and here's the thing, too, Christians have their indoctrination into the Old Testament, say, and other sects have, and Judaic sects have a different indoctrination into the Old Testament, where things are explained in far more detail because they use the Talmud along with it. And most Christians are oblivious to that. Most rabbinical teaching is about 97% Talmudic and not Old Testament. And they're allowed to question everything. The one good thing about the Talmud is they are allowed to question everything that doesn't quite make sense to them without it being blasphemy. And they go into that whole thing with the Garden of Eden. And there's many hints, of course, that isn't just Eve wasn't the first wife, apparently. That there were other ones. Lilith was one of them. And of course, even Eden wasn't the first beginning, they claim. There were failed ones before it, almost like experiments. And they don't say it was eating an apple at the tree. It was a pomegranate. And pomegranate really was a symbol, because of so many seeds in it. It's very symbolic of the ovary, actually. It's a strange symbolism. And seed to come, the people of the seed, remember. So you're looking at something more, a deeper meaning behind the simplistic version that's given to everyone else. But yeah, I understand the two bloodline thing that you're talking about too. The serpent was in the garden, and of course, it wasn't because the serpent made her eat something. It was, as you say, it's to do with something that was pre-existent, by the way. In Genesis, it tells you the serpent was over the waters, etc., etc. But it tells you that it gives you little clues that it's a being, basically, maybe from a previous time, a previous creation, as they would say in the Talmudic writings, that came through a higher intellect, whatever. I mean, Adam wasn't too bright, you understand, and neither was Eve. In fact, the whole idea of original sin was that they were kind of happy in their low IQ, low understanding, and they couldn't understand guilt because they were too dumb to even know what that meant, and suddenly they understood good and evil. So it's to do with something far, far deeper than that. And of course, the story of a betrayal by Eve is one of them. And then they go into the Cain line and the Abel line and so on and so on. So it's far, far deeper and symbolic of all the stuff that's given. And it would take hours to explain each avenue of thought that they've already gone through in the past, and even rabbinical thinking on all of this stuff. But you're kind of on the right lines of what they also conclude. There's also a difference between the Adamic line, or Adamic line as you call it. There's different schools of thought on that one. And also in Genesis, you'll notice there's two creations. He first created man and woman, created he them in his own image. And then there was no one to till the soil, so then he created Adam. And then came Eve. So you've got two lineages even there again. And you'll find this throughout the Bible, this two lineage ideal crops up over and over again, with different stories. So it's very interesting. But part of it goes to, as I say, maybe a pre-existing something there. In other words, the serpent also, or Lucifer definitely, represents intellect. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's very interesting, man. I would talk to you more, and I will call soon again, and I really appreciate you. I think everything you just said is kind of where my thought was, and I really appreciate your time and iron sharpening iron with me, and I really appreciate that, Alan.
And thanks for calling. Yeah. You take care. But, yeah, it's, It's a whole different school of thought when you go into it. You try to bring it all together, not just the one part. You got to have all of it there to try to make your... But as I say, that's the one good thing within Judaism itself, is that the rabbis are allowed to debate all the things that don't quite make sense, or to find out why this would happen, and they'll debate it into the earth, actually, into all kinds of avenues. They can lose you. But the Christians are just stick with the basic story and the rib story, etc., and all of that. So, interesting looking at Greece too, in this European Union. They're talking about pawning off Greece, going to the pawn shop. I'll be back with the story after this break. Hi folks, we're back, cutting through the matrix. This wonderful European Union, again, we've become the same for the North American amalgamation too. It's eventually into the whole continent too. It's still going on, by the way. They publish the occasional bit in the Canadian papers here. I don't know if they put anything in the US papers at all. They're still amalgamating the Americas. But it's Euro first, and of course they all have to go down the tubes into debt to the bankers to save one country. You all commit suicide to save one country that's in debt to the bankers. It's not just common sense, right? Anyway, Greece could use state-owned real estate assets as collateral for new bonds to raise more than 100 billion euros under a proposal put forward by a leading Greek think tank and former Conservative Minister. Yanis Stournaras, the head of the Foundation for Economic Industrial Research, said on Saturday the plan has been submitted to the government and would allow Athens to convert a substantial share of its public debt into a new form of asset-backed bond. In other words, it's a pawn shop. It's a pawn shop. You take all your national treasures and your assets and the whole thing, and then if you can't buy it back in time with interest, you lose a lot. Simple as that. Says the plan would enable Greece, which expects debts to amount to more than 162% of gross domestic product this year, and which has been shut out of bond markets, to reduce its public debt by 50 to 60% of GDP. Stournaras said the plan was similar to a proposal by financial experts in Germany. The main difference between the two would be that his plan would be under Greek management, and that Greece could regain ownership of the assets at any time by paying off the bonds. It's still a pawn shop. Stournaras said the plan could provide an alternative to proposals that banks accept steeper losses on their holdings of Greek bonds than the 21% haircut so far agreed. They poured billions and billions from all these countries into this. Who's dishing the cash out and who are they giving out? You know, that no one's told us. Right? No one's told us. They just can't save it. Right? It must be, Greece must have turned into lead and it's sinking or something. It's defying all the logic. Billions of euros, pounds and everything are thrown all the time at them. God knows how many bailouts. But we're not told where the money is going. Where is it going? Who gets it? Who distributes it? Who's keeping watch on it? They don't tell you a darn thing. Anyway, this is the future. They want to pawn it all off, basically. And this is an idea that's floated for a long, long time. It was floated years ago, in fact, by the big bankers themselves. And it was and at the United Nations, land for debt swaps. And they've actually been doing that across some parts of Africa and other places. So it's the greatest con going on. And the same guys really are in charge. The same guys, by the way, that will back all your greenie projects, you know, that you think are just wonderful and sustainable living, etc. And will all be leveled at the bottom, living in a tiny little 4x4 stand-up. Well, actually, you don't need much room nowadays. You just need a place to sit with your computer, and you can probably sleep in the same chair if it's a recliner. And so that'd be sustainable living for you. You'll all be quite happy using biodegradable computers. How is that? So you can buy a new one every month. People have no idea how they're used, abused, and how every thought that comes in their head, all their indoctrination, even the things they feel passionate about, always stop and say, where did I get this passion from? Who gave it to me? Is it my own, or was it given to me? You generally find it's been instilled in you, indoctrinated into you, by very clever people. But mind you didn't have much of a chance when you were young. That's when they grab you. Children have no idea that parents lie to them all the time. Or adults do. Adults certainly do. Because they want to shape the minds to create the perfect little drone for the future. Russell said it. He helped work on all these projects for the school systems. And so did Huxley's brother, Julian Huxley. UNESCO. Yep, so much for independence and free thoughts, eh? You're snaffled at birth, basically. From Hamish myself in Ontario, Canada, it's good night to me. Your God or your gods go with you.